Our next speaker this morning is Ms. Jessica Tan. She's the Managing Director of Microsoft Singapore. As Managing Director of Microsoft Singapore, Jessica is responsible for developing and driving growth in strategies as well as deepening relationships with partners, customers, and employees. Bringing to us this morning cybersecurity in an era of digital transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, let us put our hands together to welcome Ms. Jessica Tan.
A very good morning to everyone. What I'd like to share with you today is why cybersecurity is important to all of us. We run organizations that are not only increasingly dependent on technology, but we're also looking to reimagine our industries and to transform our organizations through digital technologies. In the last segment that you had, I think you had some examples of that. So in fact, the very industry that companies like Microsoft operate in, cybersecurity is a very, very pressing issue. So if you look, let me just take us through just history for a while. If you look at the history of computing or history of information technology, when we started to store data, transmit data, as well as to communicate, we also began to get attacks. With mail came mail fraud. With the telegraph, radio, and television came wire fraud. And now with the internet, we have cybercrime. So on the topic of the internet, as I said, back in time, just 11 years ago, 2005, it seems like quite a different era. This was a year when Facebook went mainstream as Mark Zuckerberg bought the Facebook.com address. This was also the year when we reached the magic number of 1 billion people online. Japan had the third largest number of people online with 86 million. China was ahead, but that was still a long way to go. The optimism at that time was extremely pervasive, and it was somewhat tempered, though, by the cybercrime hookup, when spammers met phishers and malware developers for the first time, and in a dark and dangerous and very differentiated way, created the cybercrime market. So now fast forward 10 years. Today, in the online world, this is a very different place. And many of us in this room, I think all of us in this room, are very active participants of this. Today, we have 3.4 billion people online. But the numbers in itself, that's only half of the world's population. What's different today is that there's an explosion on the number of devices connected to the internet. To put that in perspective, Facebook alone has more users than the internet had people online in 2005. Even for a company like Microsoft, we have about 1 billion people online using Windows today. But in the last 10 years, what's even more fundamental is with the advance of cloud computing, we have fundamentally changed how we use computers. The difference that 10 years has made has been a result of much more than just connectivity. It is about the unprecedented growth of the power of cloud computing and also the opportunities that it enables, of which we cannot predict even today. However, as with 2005, what we see is that there is still this concern about safety and security. This is a world where governments feel insecure and are making decisions that could either enable or stifle future innovations. So in order to unlock the potential ahead for us, we need to bring together technology solutions that respect national sovereignty, and at the same time have legal constructs that ensure open markets. A very tough balance. The public policy and indeed the technology journey of the next decade will define our ability to strike a balance between the two. A balance that is both scalable and sustainable. A balance between personal freedom and national security. A balance between digital sovereignty and data flows that feed the global economy. So now let's look at the world that we all live in today. I spoke earlier about the exploding internet. I spoke about more devices that we could imagine possible, and also the unprecedented power with cloud computing. This is a world that we're living, one that is mobile first and cloud first. A world that's being disrupted more than ever before. McKinsey and Company estimated that change today is happening 10 times faster, and the scale of that change is 300 times larger than the scale of the first industrial revolution. And if that works out to about 3,000 times the impact. So in this cloud-first, mobile-first world that some have labeled the fourth industrial revolution, let's just look at the four revolutions that came before. The first was when we used steam, and steam and water allowed us to mechanize production. The second, we created mass production via electricity. The third, we applied IT to automate the mass production. But what's different about this fourth one? The fourth that we are experiencing is removing the lines among the physical and the digital and the biological realms by digitally transforming the very world around us. Some have described the 60 years as the beginning of the next 60 years as the beginning of another technological revolution, triggered by the broad application of artificial intelligence, machine learning, robotics, and sensors. So much like the tectonic landscape altering changes that came before it, this so-called fourth industrial revolution will have massive impact on society. So I think we should stop here, we should pause here and ask ourselves a few questions. How are our businesses being transformed digitally? How are your core business models being changed by digital technology? And to do that, regardless of the industries we're in, we have to start thinking and operating like digital companies to reimagine what's possible. So it's no longer about procuring one solution and deploying one solution. It's really about organizational thinking. Thinking about our future, as well as the digital company that each of us are building. And if I can just perhaps give a term to this, we call it the systems of intelligence. These are the digital feedback loops or the information that help us engage with our customers, our employees, looking at optimizing our operations, as well as reinventing the very products, as well as the business models that we're operating with today. So the key here is a systems approach. And it's not just about technology. It's the combination of technology, people, and process. And it is this systems approach that will help a company define its competitiveness and the ability to change industries. The rewards are clear because organizations that take steps to embrace digital transformation, to evolve how they leverage data, analytics, as well as the cloud, they have been shown to generate an average of 8 points more operating income each year than those who have not. Equally, consider just half a century ago, the life expectancy of a firm on the Fortune 500 companies. The typical life expectancy was 75 years. But if you look at today's environment, with the technological disruptions we're seeing, it is less than 15 years, and it's declining further. So the lifespan of a company is now a lot shorter. So we're seeing organizations utilizing digital transformation to continuously improve how they engage customers. And this is important because by building natural and tailored experiences to delight customers and to harness data representing a complete view of your customer, you can then draw actionable insights. And then you can deliver personalization at scale. And this becomes something that you can do as a segment of one by looking at all the data you have. At the same time, talent, people is another area that all organizations are also finding a very, very important. So how do you empower your employees? How you're able to help them achieve and do their work by designing a workplace where every work style can thrive. This will also be a competitive advantage for companies. This is one that will harness the digital intelligence to improve experiences and enable the flexibility of mobility and keeping your organization and people informed. At the same time, you can also optimize your operations by some of the points that I shared with you earlier, improving your service levels, reducing your costs with the intelligence you have. And most importantly, you can harness data as a strategic asset to shift from hindsight to foresight, automating manual processes, delivering personalization to customers, and innovating the very business models that you operate with. All this will differentiate you and help you capture emerging revenue opportunities. But while we say this, there's a lot of change happening. We also do know that there are certain things that do stay as constants. And this is geopolitical changes will continue. The evolution of technology will continue. It'll get even faster. And also this point about the persistence of attacks. Malicious actors will continue to exist. Amongst other reasons, this is due to what I just shared with you, that wealth of information that will reside and be transferred over the internet. The critical public and private services and the infrastructures that will depend on the internet to operate, and the capacity of the identity, the location. When malicious actors get hold of this becomes extremely dangerous. However, it is also important to distinguish connected people from connected devices. So cybersecurity, why did I take you through this entire journey of the internet and digital transformation? The reason for that is because why is cybersecurity important? It is important because of the very fact of how we use information and how technology is enabling us to use the information. There's opportunities, but there are also challenges. But therefore, we have to come collectively together as individuals, companies, organizations, and governments to respond to the very technology, the use of the very technology to address this challenge. And that's what we're doing with cybersecurity. And at the center of all of this has to be trust. So as we try to play a positive role, have technology play a positive role in all those scenarios I shared with you, it is important that trust becomes the very core of the tech industry. And not just of the tech industry, but every industry. And therefore, cybersecurity matters for all of us. But again, it is not about technology, it's about the use of technology. But we all must remember, no one's going to use technology that they do not trust. And there are really 4 pillars that I'd like to share with you on how we see technology and how technology should be used if we want to have trust. First, it's about privacy. We have to ensure that your data is private and it's under your control. So the solutions that are provided in our industry has to respect that, has to respect that your data is yours and is under your control. At the same time, we also must ensure compliance to manage the data in accordance with the law of the land. We must also be transparent about both the collection of the data and the use of the data. And lastly, we must ensure that the data is secure. And it is on these four strong commitments that we must make sure that products and services are being delivered. Because it has been a very tough year for cybersecurity. Let me just share with you, just the top 8 or so of data breaches last year has led to about 160 million data records being compromised. In fact, one of the biggest challenges that we all face is not in the fact of having an attack, but the very fact that it takes a lot. Sometimes you don't even know that you're attacked, and the time to detect an intrusion is something like 129 days between when you've been intruded versus when you know and you start to respond. I think we've seen many examples in the industry. And the cost of all of this in terms of lost productivity and loss of growth really adds up. And it's estimated to be something like 3 trillion. Now in a global economy that's challenged by growth, I think we all agree that this is a huge issue. So the question is, what are we going to do about responding to this challenge, and what is our approach? So before I talk about the approach, I'd like to talk about the environment. Because this is a time when we talk about environment of a very strong perimeter around it, where we can talk about our data, our applications, our computing endpoints, all being secure within the 4 walls of environment. That's what we used to talk about. We used to talk about this perimeter, that we could protect what's within our environment. What we're seeing now is that we live in a world where the attacks can come from anywhere. The attack vectors can come from anywhere. The attackers themselves are a lot more sophisticated and a lot more organized. So it's a perimeter-less world. It's a world that's constantly evolving, that's dynamic, and that's under constant attack. That's the environment that we have to deal with. And I didn't say all of this to scare all of you, that everyone decides to lock up and make it a perimeter world. The point I'm trying to make is there's a balance, because there are real opportunities. There are real pluses of what this digital transformation can bring. But it's in the recognition of also what we do about the attacks, what we do to be prepared. That has to be done together. So one of the things that is important then has to be perspectives. So I just want to share with you that, just using Microsoft as an example so that I can just illustrate the point. We do run one of the largest internet services, both on the consumer side as well as on the enterprise side. And what this gives us is a pretty unique perspective of what's happening. It gives us a great sampling in terms of both the attack vectors and, more importantly, how one can respond to them. So, for example, we update 1 billion Windows devices every month with security updates, as well as to ensure that there's compatibility and that the ecosystem remains secure from modern cyber threats and that it stays resilient. Our security system removes spams and malware from over 200 billion emails each month at a global scale. What we need to ensure is that malicious links and attachments that may have malware associated with them do not reach the users. So with that level of global security and support infrastructure, what it allows us to do is also give us that perspective and allows us to share that information as well. And it is with this changing environment that it's no longer about protecting code, it's no longer about threat modeling and testing, but it's in fact the operational security posture that is constantly evolving, that is constantly under attack, that is important. So let me talk about the operational security posture, because I think that's where it all starts. It's like going to the gym every day. Every hour of the day you need to be prepared. And so it means that you have to exercise this operational security posture in a continuous basis. So it's important not only to protect, but to detect as well as to respond. And the posture can no longer be one of just protecting computing endpoints or applications. It's about computing endpoints. It's also about the applications, which may be inside your premises, but it's also about the services that you're using, and it's also about the sensors. It's also about the HVAC systems, or what you call your heating, your ventilation, as well as your air conditioning systems, and the data center infrastructure. Everything from sensors to your data center is part of the environment that you need to protect. Then you come to detection. You can no longer just wait to detect signatures and then come up with a response to them and then deploy a remediation. We now have to move to a much more behavioral sensing. You have to move to one that you detect based on behaviors of the attack vector. And when it comes to response, it is perhaps the area that's going through the largest change in terms of how we respond. We are using the transformation. We have to look at it as how we can ensure both compatibility as well as security of endpoints continuously. And this cannot be limited to the services that we run. In fact, the knowledge that we gain, as I shared with you, is something that we must share broadly with the industry and our customers, because it's going to take us all to come together to combat this. This operational security posture has perhaps been also one of the biggest change for a company like Microsoft in gathering and coming to the solutions that we provide. Because it's not securing just our environment and that of our customers anymore. Because that's important because of the data that you use, and you need to protect the data. But we realize that there is no single organization that can solve the security challenges alone. So we have worked hard to form alliances with a variety of organizations, sharing information and partnering on solutions with our peers in the industry, governments and law enforcement, so that all of our customers and partners can benefit. So this is why after just launching, we've just launched the Microsoft Transparency Center and Cybersecurity Center here in Singapore just last week. And this is to deliver a holistic approach to building trust and to secure the computing environment. But we know that's not enough. So we are also looking at partnering, and we've partnered the Cybersecurity Agency of Singapore so that we can also work together to build a more vibrant cybersecurity environment here. So in that collaboration, what we're doing is we're sharing cyber threat intelligence and collaborating on innovations on cybersecurity services. And we hope to nurture a safer and trusted cyberspace through building local capability in cybersecurity, as well as supporting public cyber awareness and education programs. So I'd like to stop here for a while and just take us back. I talked to you about the opportunities that digital transformation is enabling, not just businesses, but individuals and governments and even society to benefit. And these are opportunities and benefits that I don't think we should stop. But at the same time, the very fact that we're having this conference here today is the very fact of the recognition that cybersecurity is important. And what we do about cybersecurity together is more important. It's not about one company or an individual or a government. The recognition that we all must have is that it's going to take all of us constantly innovating and putting together the right policies and the right programs, as well as building the right talent to be able to combat this But it is important that we do this because there is just so much more that each of us can benefit just by making that more secure. So while we talk about all the challenges, and I'm quite sure you've heard about them, as we talk about all the opportunities, I hope that we all can come together to be able to address this. And I'd like to just leave you with one final thought. Because I think perspectives is very important. And as we move forward in this journey of cybersecurity and ensuring that we have a safer environment online, it's also the perspectives that each of us take and the perspectives that we take that will determine the approach that we're all going to build, whether we're individuals, we're organizations like Microsoft, or we're governments or law enforcement. And so I'm going to leave you with this thought that our CEO, Satya Nadella, constantly reminds us. He says that when you change the way you see the world, you change the world you see. So I hope that we can change the way we see both the opportunities and the threats so that we can all make not just Singapore a smarter nation and a safer nation, but also the world a smarter place and a safer place for everyone. Thank you.